The moment the repairman handed me that smashed phone back, I saw something. A message that didn't belong to me. A secret I never wanted to uncover. And it broke me in ways I can't describe. I was never more alone in my life than I was in that tiny gray apartment on the Upper West Side, in a city that never truly felt like home anymore. The silence in that cramped living room was so thick I could taste it, bitter like the coffee I'd forgotten to drink hours ago. Today I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would share. And if for even a second this feels familiar, I only ask that you like this video and subscribe. It will help me keep opening my heart. Every morning at 5:30, I woke before dawn in that shoebox of an apartment, my 72-year-old bones creaking against the thin mattress I'd bought secondhand from a thrift store on Amsterdam Avenue. The city's relentless hum vibrated through paper-thin walls. Sirens, honking, the subway rumbling beneath my feet like a monster that never slept. My days had become one long, painful monotony of serving others, cleaning up after careless hands, and pretending I didn't notice how invisible I'd become in my own family. That October morning started like all the others. The smell of burnt coffee filled the kitchen while I prepared breakfast for Lisa and the kids before she rushed off to another important meeting downtown. She worked in finance, something with stocks and investments that brought in serious money. More dollars flowing through her accounts in a month than I'd seen in years. Her silk blouses cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her gold watch gleaming as she scrolled through her phone, checking cryptocurrency prices and stock market updates that would determine her mood for the day. "Mom!" she called from the dining table, not looking up from her laptop screen where numbers danced across charts I couldn't understand. "I need you to fix my phone today. The screen's cracked, and I can't deal with it right now. Too busy with this Bitcoin portfolio review." She handed me her iPhone without a glance, its spiderweb of cracks catching the morning light streaming through our grimy window. The weight of it felt heavier than it should have, loaded with a trust I didn't know would soon shatter my world. I remember the way she dismissed me with that casual wave, like I was hired help rather than family, while she dove back into her investment calls with clients who clearly valued her time more than her own family did. "Of course, sweetheart," I heard myself say. The words automatic after so many years of saying yes to everything. "I'll take it to that repair place on Broadway." My grandson Tommy, barely 8 years old, looked up from his cereal bowl with those sweet brown eyes that reminded me of my late husband. "Grandma, can you help me with my math homework after school?" "She'll be busy with the phone, honey," Lisa cut in sharply, still typing on her laptop. "Ask your dad." But we all knew my son Michael would be working late again at his investment firm, chasing another big deal, another fortune to secure their future while I handled the daily details of keeping their world spinning. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was living paycheck to paycheck while surrounded by people counting their wealth in millions. I tucked Lisa's broken phone into my worn purse and walked 17 blocks through streets that smelled of hot dogs and exhaust fumes. The repair shop sat wedged between a bodega and a dry cleaner, its neon sign flickering like my hope these days. The repairman, a gentle Pakistani man named Hassan, examined the phone with careful fingers. "It will take 2 hours," he said in accented English that reminded me how multicultural this city was, how many stories of struggle and sacrifice lived within its concrete walls. "Very bad crack. Need to replace whole screen." I nodded and spent those 2 hours wandering through Central Park, watching joggers and dog walkers live their lives with purpose, while I felt like a ghost haunting my own existence. Young mothers pushed strollers past me, their faces glowing with the kind of joy I remembered having when Michael was small. Now those memories felt like photographs from someone else's life. When I returned to collect the phone, Hassan's expression had changed. His dark eyes held something I couldn't name. Concern. Maybe pity. He glanced at the phone screen, then at me, then back at the phone. "Madam," he said quietly. "When I fix screen, some messages appear. I try not to look, but..." He handed me the device with reluctance. "Maybe you should check before you give back." My hands trembled as I took the phone. The screen was perfect now, crystal clear, and automatically displayed the last opened app, text messages. A conversation I'd never seen before, between Lisa and someone named David. My eyes scanned the words, and my world tilted on its axis. Can't wait to see you tonight at the Meridian Hotel. Tell Michael you're working late again. Already told him. He never questions anything anymore. His mother will watch the kids like always. Perfect. I've got news about that cryptocurrency investment. We could make enough to start fresh somewhere new. Without him? Without both of them. You deserve better than being tied down by family obligations. The phone slipped from my numb fingers, clattering onto the counter. Hassan caught it before it could hit the floor, his eyes filled with the kind of understanding that comes from witnessing too much human pain. I am sorry, he whispered. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The fluorescent lights above seemed too bright, the sounds of traffic outside too loud. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about my role in this family, crumbled like the phone screen had crumbled. But this break went deeper, cutting through my chest like broken glass. How much do I owe you? I managed to whisper. No charge, Hassan said gently. Some repairs cost too much. I walked home through streets that looked the same, but felt completely different. Every step echoed with the weight of revelation. Every face I passed seemed to know my shame, my foolishness for believing I mattered to people who were planning to abandon me. The city's noise became a symphony of loneliness, each horn, honk, and siren wail confirming what I'd suspected but never wanted to admit. When I reached our building, I sat on the stoop for 20 minutes, holding that repaired phone like evidence of my own irrelevance. Mrs. Diaz from 3B found me there, her weathered hands gentle on my shoulders as I finally let the tears come. Mija, she whispered, whatever it is, you don't have to carry it alone. I want to pause here for a moment and ask you something. Have you ever felt invisible in your own life? Have you ever discovered that the people you've sacrificed everything for see you as nothing more than a convenience? If this is resonating with you, please know you're not alone. Keep listening, because what happened next changed everything. The weight of Lisa's betrayal pressed against my chest as I climbed those 5 flights of stairs to our apartment. Each step felt like walking toward an execution I'd unknowingly scheduled. The hallway smelled of other people's dinners, curry from 4A, something Italian from 4C, reminders of families gathered around tables, actually talking to each other instead of scheming behind each other's backs. I unlocked our door and found Lisa exactly where I'd left her, surrounded by financial documents and investment portfolios spread across our cramped dining table, charts showing stock market trends, printouts of Bitcoin values, bank statements revealing deposits that would have made my head spin if I'd had any energy left for spinning. She looked up expectantly, her manicured hand extended for the phone. All fixed? She asked, not really looking at me. I held the phone but didn't hand it over immediately. Something had shifted inside me during that walk home. Some invisible line crossed that I couldn't uncross. Yes, I said carefully. All fixed. New screen. Like new. She grabbed it from my hand and immediately started scrolling, her face illuminating with the blue glow of a screen that now held secrets I wished I'd never discovered. I watched her fingers move across the surface, probably checking for new messages from David, planning another evening of deception while I babysat her children and enabled her lies. Thanks, Mom, she said absently, already absorbed in whatever conversation she was having with her lover. That word, Mom, struck me like a physical blow, not because she said it wrong, but because of how empty it sounded, how automatic, like calling the taxi driver Sir, or the grocery clerk Miss. A polite acknowledgement of a service provider, nothing more. I need to tell you about the history that led to this moment, because you need to understand how deep this betrayal cut. You need to understand what I'd given up to be standing in that moment, holding my breath while my daughter-in-law planned her escape. 3 years earlier, when Michael first brought Lisa home to my comfortable 2-bedroom apartment in Queens, I could see the calculations in her eyes as she surveyed my modest furniture, my small savings, my willingness to help. She was beautiful then, still is, with honey blonde hair and ambitious eyes that sparkled when she talked about her career in finance. She was making good money even then, handling investment portfolios and cryptocurrency trades for wealthy clients, but it was never enough. Mom, Michael had said, his voice urgent over the phone 6 months after their wedding. Lisa's pregnant. We need help with the down payment for a place in Manhattan. Her work requires her to be close to Wall Street, And you know how expensive. I'd said yes before he finished asking. Of course I'd said yes. I liquidated my retirement account. $30,000 I'd saved working double shifts as a school secretary for 25 years, and handed it over without question. My own future security became secondary to theirs, the way it always did, the way I thought it was supposed to. When Tommy was born, I moved from Queens to this tiny Upper West Side apartment to be closer, to help more. My comfortable life became cramped, expensive, lonely, but they needed me, or so I thought. I watched Tommy while Lisa worked her demanding job, managing investment accounts worth millions while I changed diapers and sang lullabies. I cleaned their apartment, cooked their meals, handled their laundry, became their unpaid domestic staff. "Mom, you're such a lifesaver," Lisa would say whenever I showed up with groceries or stayed late with Tommy so she could meet clients for dinner. "I don't know what we'd do without you." The praise felt good then, necessary. Like finally I was needed again after years of feeling my relevance shrink along with my aging body. When my arthritis flared up and I could barely hold a coffee cup, I still pushed through because what was my pain compared to their success? When I caught the flu 2 winters ago and spent 3 days in bed with a fever, nobody checked on me. They were too busy with a new investment opportunity, some cryptocurrency venture that demanded their complete attention. "Are you sure you're okay, Mom?" Michael had asked over the phone when I called to say I couldn't watch Tommy that day. "Because Lisa has this important meeting, and we really need—" I told him I was fine, lied, dragged myself out of bed and spent 8 hours with my grandson while they chased another fortune. That night, I collapsed in my apartment, wondering when my value became measured entirely in my availability to serve others. The pattern repeated for 3 years. Financial emergencies that required my help. Except they weren't true emergencies. They were convenience taxes, paid by me so Lisa and Michael could maintain their lifestyle without sacrifice. My grocery money became Tommy's private school tuition. My medication fund became their vacation budget. My heating bill became their investment capital. "Mom, we'll pay you back as soon as this deal closes," became their family motto. But deals always led to bigger deals. Opportunities that required reinvestment of profits I never saw return to my depleted accounts. I want to ask you something right now. Has anyone ever made you feel like your only value was in what you could give them? Have you ever said yes so many times that you forgot you were allowed to say no? Because standing in that apartment, holding the proof of Lisa's betrayal, I realized I'd been paying for my own mistreatment for years. But the financial exploitation wasn't the worst part. Money can be replaced. Savings can be rebuilt. What cut deeper were the 1,000 small cruelties, the daily indications that I was tolerated rather than loved, needed rather than wanted. Like the Christmas morning when I arrived with carefully chosen gifts, only to find my spot at the dinner table had been given to Lisa's sister who'd flown in unexpectedly. I ate standing up in the kitchen while family photos were taken without me. "We'll get one with you next time, Mom," Michael promised. But next time never came. Or the birthday party for Tommy where I spent all day preparing decorations and cake, only to be introduced to other parents as Michael's mom who helps out sometimes. Not grandmother, not family, just help. Casual, replaceable help. The microaggressions accumulated like paper cuts, each one small enough to ignore individually, together creating wounds that wouldn't heal. Lisa's habit of checking her phone while I talked, nodding absently at everything I said. Her way of asking me to keep an eye on Tommy like he wasn't my grandson but another chore on her list. Her casual comments about my appearance, my outdated clothes, my cute attempts to understand their world of investments in cryptocurrency. "Mom, you should really update your look," she'd said just last month while I was folding their laundry. "Maybe something more modern, more age-appropriate." Age-appropriate. Like I was past the expiration date for being treated with basic respect. The night I spent 12 hours in the emergency room with suspected pneumonia, alone, because they couldn't miss a dinner party where Lisa was networking with potential clients. I called Michael from my hospital bed, hoping for comfort, for concern. "Is it serious?" he'd asked, and I heard music and laughter in the background. "Because we're at this really important event." "Lisa's trying to land a huge account." "No," I'd whispered into the phone. "Not serious. Don't worry about me. But I was worrying about myself, finally. Lying on that hard hospital bed, listening to machines beep and nurses' footsteps echo in sterile hallways, I wondered when I'd become so forgettable to the people I'd centered my entire life around. That was the night I first fantasized about disappearing. Not dying. I want to be clear about that. But simply vanishing from their lives to see how long it would take them to notice. Would they worry when I didn't show up to babysit? Or would they just be annoyed at the inconvenience? The fantasy became a recurring dream. Sometimes I imagined moving back to Queens, returning to my old life. My old friends who actually asked about my day and listened to the answers. Other times I pictured something more dramatic, packing a suitcase and buying a bus ticket to somewhere no one knew me as the woman who said yes to everything. But fear always pulled me back. Fear of being truly alone in this massive, indifferent city. Fear that maybe they were right. Maybe I was too old, too irrelevant, too much trouble to deserve better treatment. Maybe this was simply what family looked like now, in a world where everyone was too busy building wealth and chasing success to make time for love. Standing in that apartment, watching Lisa text her lover on the phone I'd paid to repair, those fears felt smaller than they used to. The anger was bigger now. Cleaner. More focused. I cleared my throat. Lisa? She looked up, irritated by the interruption. What? I need to ask you something. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Are you happy here? With Michael? With this life we've built? Her eyes narrowed, suddenly alert. What kind of question is that? An honest one. I'm asking for an honest answer. She stared at me for a long moment, her fingers still hovering over the phone screen. I'm busy, Mom. Can we talk about this later? When? When would be convenient for you to have an honest conversation with me? Something in my tone must have warned her. She put the phone face down on the table and gave me her full attention for the first time in months. Okay, she said slowly. What's really going on here? I looked around our cramped apartment, my sacrificed comfort, their convenience. I looked at her expensive clothes, her gold jewelry, the investment documents scattered across the table like records of a fortune I'd helped fund, but would never benefit from. I looked at her beautiful, calculating face and saw clearly for the first time what I'd been refusing to acknowledge. She didn't love me. Maybe she never had. I wasn't her mother-in-law. I was her unpaid employee, her source of free labor and financial assistance, her insurance policy against the inconvenience of actually raising her own child or building her marriage without external support. I know about David, I said quietly. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again like a fish gasping for air. Her manicured fingers gripped the edge of the table. I don't know what you're talking about, she whispered, but her voice shook. The repair shop fixes more than screens, I said. Sometimes it reveals things that were meant to stay hidden. She stared at me for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Then her face hardened, shifting from panic to defiance to something that looked almost like relief. How much did you see? She asked flatly. Enough. She nodded slowly, like she was working out a complicated equation in her head. What do you want? What did I want? The question hung in the air like smoke. For the first time in 3 years, someone was asking what I wanted instead of telling me what they needed. The novelty of it made me dizzy. I want to know how long you've been planning to leave. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You're having an affair. You're planning to take Tommy and disappear. You're using me to make it easier. Her eyes blazed. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. The expectations. Michael he's not who I thought he was when I married him. And what about me? What am I to you? The question seemed to surprise her. She looked at me like she'd never considered that I might have feelings about my role in their lives, like I was a piece of furniture that had suddenly asked for an opinion. She started, then stopped, started again. You're Michael's mother. That's it? That's all I am to you? What else would you be? The casual cruelty of it hit me like cold water. Not even pretense. Not even the effort to lie kindly. Just the truth, stripped of any sugarcoating. I was nothing to her except an obligation that came with her marriage. A burden she tolerated because she had to. I've spent 3 years helping you, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. I gave you my savings. I moved here to be closer. I raised your son while you built your career. I cleaned your home, cooked your food, sacrificed my health and my future to make your life easier. And you're telling me that means nothing to you? She shrugged. Actually shrugged. You chose to do those things. No one forced you. I chose to do them because I thought we were family. We are family. That's why you do those things. No, I said, feeling something break open in my chest. Family means it flows both ways. Family means caring happens in all directions. Family means I matter too. She picked up her phone and started scrolling again, dismissing me with the gesture like our conversation was over. I don't have time for this drama right now. David and I have investment meeting tonight, and I need to prepare. David and I. She didn't even pretend anymore. Does Michael know? Michael doesn't know a lot of things. That's his problem. The cruelty was breathtaking. This was the woman I'd welcomed into my family, supported, defended when friends questioned her ambitions, her priorities, her treatment of me. This was the mother of my grandson, the person I'd trusted with my son's happiness and my own. What about Tommy? What about him? He's part of this family too. He loves his father. He loves me. He'll adapt. Children are resilient. Children are resilient. The phrase social workers use when they're explaining why a child will survive trauma that adults create. The phrase that makes abandonment sound like good parenting. I need to stop here and ask you something that might be painful. Have you ever had someone dismiss your love like it was worthless? Have you ever been treated like your feelings don't count because you're supposed to accept whatever crumbs they offer? Because what happened next in that apartment changed everything about how I saw myself and what I was willing to accept. The sound of keys in the door interrupted the electric tension between Lisa and me. Michael's voice echoed from the entryway, tired but cheerful. Mom? Lisa? I brought Chinese food. Had a great day trading cryptocurrency. Bitcoin's up 12%. Lisa's face shifted instantly from cold calculation to warm welcome, like switching on a light. She shoved her phone into her purse and arranged herself into the pose of a loving wife, smoothing her hair and adjusting her expression. In here, honey, she called sweetly. Your mom was just telling me about the phone repair. I stared at her, amazed by the performance. The seamless transition from conspirator to victim, from predator to prey. She was good at this. Had probably been practicing for months. Michael appeared in the doorway, loosening his tie, holding bags of takeout that smelled like garlic and ginger. He looked tired but satisfied. The expression of a man who believed his life was exactly what it appeared to be. How much for the phone repair, Mom? He asked, pulling out his wallet. Let me reimburse you. It was free, I said quietly. Lisa shot me a warning look, quick as lightning. Free? That's great. Nice guy, huh? Very nice, very honest. Michael started unpacking containers of food, chattering about his day, the markets, the incredible potential for cryptocurrency investments to secure their future. Their future, not mine. Never mine. Lisa, did you see the Bitcoin projections I sent you? We could double our investment portfolio by Christmas if we leverage the right opportunities. I saw them, she said, helping him with the food. Very promising. We should meet with your investment advisor next week. We. They spoke in we constantly, but the pronoun never included me. I was a they about them, the third person standing in their first-person plural world. Tommy bounded into the room, school backpack sliding off one shoulder, face bright with 8-year-old energy. Grandma, did you bring me a surprise? I always brought him something small. A candy bar, a toy from the dollar store, some little token to make his face light up exactly like this. But today I'd forgotten. Today I'd been too devastated by his mother's betrayal to think about treats. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Not today. His face fell slightly, then brightened again. That's okay. Will you help me with my math homework after dinner? Lisa answered before I could. Grandma needs to go home after dinner. She's had a long day. I hadn't said I needed to go home. Hadn't said anything about leaving. But Lisa was managing the situation, controlling the narrative, setting boundaries that served her purposes. But I need help with fractions, Tommy protested. Daddy doesn't understand them either. You'll figure it out, Lisa said firmly. You're a smart boy. I watched my grandson's shoulders slump, watched him accept that the help he needed wouldn't be available, because the adult in charge had decided it was inconvenient. 8 years old, and already learning that his needs came second to everyone else's agenda. "I can help," I said softly. "No." Lisa's voice was sharp. "You've done enough today." Michael looked up from his food containers, finally sensing the tension. "Is everything okay? You two seem—" "Everything's fine," Lisa said quickly. "Just tired. Long day for everyone." But everything wasn't fine, and I was tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. Tired of being managed, dismissed, used. Tired of watching my grandson learn that love came with conditions and limitations. During dinner, I sat at their small table eating food I hadn't chosen from containers I hadn't opened, listening to conversations about financial strategies I'd helped fund but wasn't included in. Lisa and Michael discussed their investment options, their cryptocurrency portfolios, their plans for wealth accumulation that would secure their future independence. "The goal is to have enough assets that we never have to depend on anyone else," Michael said, spooning rice onto his plate. "Complete financial freedom." I almost laughed. They were discussing financial independence while sitting in an apartment paid for partially with my retirement money, eating dinner while I babysit their child for free, planning a future that depended entirely on my continued availability for unpaid labor. "What about your mother?" Lisa asked casually, like she was asking about the weather. "Will she be okay when we eventually move to a bigger place?" When, not if. They were already planning their exit from this life, this apartment, my proximity, planning a future that included leaving me behind. "Mom's resourceful," Michael said, not looking at me. "She'll figure something out." Tommy looked up from his fried rice. "Where would Grandma live?" "Probably back in Queens," Michael said. "She used to have a nice place there." Used to. Past tense. Like my sacrifice was ancient history rather than ongoing reality. "But who would help me with my homework?" "You won't need as much help when you're older," Lisa said smoothly. "Besides, there are tutors. Professionals. Professionals. People you pay for the services I provided for free. People who would never love him the way I did, who would never care about his struggles the way I cared, but who could be hired and fired according to convenience." After dinner, I helped clear the table while Lisa and Michael discussed weekend plans that didn't include me. Museum visits, playground outings, family activities that somehow never required or welcomed my participation. "Mom," Michael said as I was putting on my coat, "thanks for handling the phone thing today. I know it's not your favorite kind of errand." I paused in the doorway, looking back at this family I'd worked so hard to serve. Lisa on the couch, already texting someone, probably David. Michael sorting through investment documents. Tommy watching television, his homework forgotten. "Michael," I said carefully, "do you think I'm happy?" The question caught him off guard. He looked up from his papers, really looked at me for the first time all evening. What do you mean?" "I mean exactly what I asked. Do you think I'm happy with my life here?" He glanced at Lisa, who was watching us while pretending to text. Sure. You love spending time with Tommy. You're close to us. You're helping us build something good here." "What about what I'm building for myself? I don't understand. What am I building, Michael? What's my future? What happens to me when you don't need me anymore?" The questions hung in the air like accusations. Michael's face showed genuine confusion, like it had never occurred to him that I might have my own dreams, my own needs, my own right to a future that included more than serving his family. "Mom, you're being dramatic. We'll always need you. Will you? Or will you always need what I can do for you? Because those are very different things." Lisa stopped pretending to text. "What's brought this on?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. I looked at her directly. Perspective? Clarity. The kind of revelation that comes from seeing things as they really are instead of as I wish they were. What's that supposed to mean? It means I know who you really are now. Both of you. The silence that followed felt dangerous. Tommy looked up from the television, sensing adult tension he couldn't understand. Michael set down his papers, his face creased with worry. "Mom, if something's bothering you, we can talk about it. But not like this. Not in front of Tommy. When then? When would be convenient for you to have an honest conversation about what happens in this family? That's not fair, isn't it? When do I get to be inconvenient?" When do I get to have feelings that matter? When do I get to ask questions and expect real answers instead of being managed and dismissed? Lisa stood up from the couch. I think you should go home now. You're obviously upset about something, and this isn't the time or place. There's never a time or place, is there? There's never a right moment for me to be anything other than grateful for whatever scraps of attention you throw my way. Mom, Michael's voice was warning me, setting boundaries around how much honesty he was willing to hear. But I was past caring about his comfort, their convenience, the maintenance of polite fiction. I spent today learning that the people I've sacrificed everything for see me as nothing more than an unpaid employee, a source of free labor and emergency funding, a convenience they tolerate because they have to. That's not true, Michael said, but his voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? When was the last time either of you asked me how I was feeling? When was the last time you included me in your plans instead of just expecting me to be available for your needs? When was the last time you treated me like family instead of like staff? The questions hit their target. I could see it in Michael's face, the recognition of how one-sided our relationships had become. But I could also see his discomfort with the recognition, his desire to return to the easier dynamic where I asked for nothing and provided everything. We do appreciate you, he said weakly. Appreciation isn't the same as love, and definitely isn't the same as respect. I opened the door to leave, then turned back one more time. I won't be available tomorrow, I said quietly, or this weekend. I need time to think about what I want my life to look like. But Mom, Michael started, we have that dinner party Saturday, and Lisa's a grown woman with a successful career managing millions in investments. I'm sure she can figure out childcare arrangements without my help. Lisa's face flushed with anger. This is ridiculous. You're being selfish. Yes, I said. I am. For the first time in 3 years, I'm being selfish. And I'm discovering that it feels much better than being useful. I let myself out of their apartment and walked down 5 flights of stairs, my footsteps echoing in the stairwell like a countdown. Each step away from them felt lighter, like I was climbing out of quicksand that had been pulling me under so gradually, I hadn't noticed I was drowning. On the street, the city air felt different. Cleaner, despite the exhaust and garbage smells. The noise felt less oppressive, more like a background symphony than an assault. For the first time in months, I wasn't rushing to get somewhere, to do something, to solve someone else's problem. I was just walking, just thinking, just existing for myself. Mrs. Diaz was sitting on our building's front steps, enjoying the evening air and watching the neighborhood come alive with dinner preparations and children playing. Rosa, she called softly, how are you feeling after this afternoon? I sat down beside her on the concrete steps that were still warm from the day's sun. Different, I said. Scared, but different. Different how? Like I remembered something I'd forgotten. Like I remembered that I'm allowed to matter too. She nodded knowingly. It's hard when family makes you feel like loving them means disappearing yourself. Is that what happened to you? Mrs. Diaz's eyes grew distant. My daughter lived with me for 15 years after her divorce. I raised her children, managed her finances, cleaned her house, covered her responsibilities so she could build her new life. When she finally got back on her feet and moved out, she said, "Thanks, Mom. I couldn't have done it without you." Then she moved 3 states away and calls me twice a year. How do you stand it? I learned the difference between helping someone and enabling them to use you. I learned that love without boundaries isn't love. It's self-destruction. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the city live its evening life around us. Couples walking home from work, children racing scooters down sidewalks, elderly neighbors greeting each other with genuine warmth and interest. What will you do now? Mrs. Diaz asked. I don't know yet, but I know what I won't do. I won't pretend anymore that being treated badly is the same as being loved. Have you ever had that moment of clarity, when you suddenly see that what you thought was love was actually just habit? When you realize that the people you've been serving don't actually value your service, they just expect it? Because that evening on the steps was the beginning of everything changing for me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my narrow bed, staring at the ceiling and replaying conversations from the past 3 years, hearing them differently now that I understood my actual role in Lisa and Michael's lives. Comments I'd interpreted as affection revealed themselves as management techniques. Gratitude I'd treasured showed itself as maintenance, keeping me motivated to continue providing free services. I remembered the Christmas when I'd spent 2 weeks shopping for perfect gifts, plus hundreds of dollars I couldn't really afford, only to receive a generic gift card to a department store in return. "We thought you'd rather pick out your own present," Lisa had said, but I knew the truth was they hadn't thought about me at all until the last minute. I remembered Michael's birthday last year, when I'd planned and paid for a family dinner at an expensive restaurant, only to discover they'd made other plans. "Oh, we thought you meant just contribute to the dinner, not plan the whole thing," he'd said, somehow making their oversight my fault. I remembered dozens of conversations where I'd tried to share my own news, my own concerns, my own small victories, only to have the subject changed back to their careers, their investments, their social plans, their problems that needed immediate solutions. At 3 a.m, I got up and made tea, sitting at my small kitchen table with a notebook and pen. I started writing down every memory I could recall of feeling dismissed, used, or forgotten by the people I'd centered my life around. The list grew longer than I expected. Pages of small cruelties, casual dismissals, and assumptions that my time and energy belonged to them without question. Then I made another list. Things I'd wanted to do but couldn't because of my obligations to their family. Places I'd wanted to visit. Classes I'd wanted to take. Friends I'd lost touch with because I was always available for their emergencies. Hobbies I'd abandoned because every spare minute was spent in service to their convenience. The second list was longer than the first. By sunrise, I'd filled half the notebook with reminders of my own forgotten dreams and evidence of my family's indifference to them. But instead of feeling more depressed, I felt something that surprised me. Relief. The truth was heavy, but it was cleaner than the lies I'd been telling myself. My phone buzzed with a text message. From Lisa. "Need you to watch Tommy today. Emergency at work. David's client meeting moved up." David's client meeting. She wasn't even pretending anymore to hide their relationship. The casualness of it, the assumption that I would drop everything for another emergency that benefited her affair, made me laugh out loud. I typed back, "Not available today." The response came immediately. "What do you mean not available?" "I mean I have other plans." "What plans? Since when do you have plans?" The question revealed everything about how they saw me, as a person with no life, no interests, no commitments beyond their convenience. Someone who existed in suspended animation between their needs. I turned off my phone without responding. That morning, I did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I walked to the Metropolitan Museum of Art and spent 4 hours looking at paintings instead of solving other people's problems. I stood in front of Van Gogh's self-portrait with a straw hat and felt a kinship with the man who'd painted his own face with such fierce determination to be seen, to be remembered, to matter. In the museum cafeteria, I bought myself lunch. Not takeout for a family meal, not groceries for someone else's dinner, but food chosen because I wanted it, eaten at my own pace while reading a book I'd wanted to read for months. My phone had 17 missed calls and 43 text messages by the time I turned it back on at 3 p.m. Michael. "Mom, where are you? Lisa's been trying to reach you all day." Michael. "This is really inconvenient. We needed your help today." Michael. "Are you okay? Please call back." Lisa. "I don't know what game you're playing, but I need childcare now." Lisa. "Tommy's school called. No one picked him up. I had to leave work." Lisa. "This is incredibly selfish. We had important meetings today." Lisa. "Fine. Be dramatic. But this affects Tommy too." And 17 more variations on the theme of my inconvenience to their convenience. I called Michael back. "Mom, thank God. Where were you?" "We were worried." But his voice carried more annoyance than worry. "I went to the museum." "The museum? We've been calling you all day." Lisa had to cancel important meetings because no one could watch Tommy. Lisa is his mother. Watching him is her job, not mine. You know it's not that simple. Her work requires flexibility, and you're usually available, usually willing to drop everything, usually saying yes without question. Well, yes. That's how we've made this work. How you've made it work. What about how I've made it work? What about the cost to me? Mom, I don't understand what's gotten into you lately. Clarity has gotten into me. Self-respect. The revolutionary idea that my time and energy have value too? There was a long pause. Are you feeling okay? Do you need to see a doctor? The automatic assumption that any assertion of my own needs must be a medical problem rather than a reasonable human response was infuriating and illuminating in equal measure. I'm feeling better than I have in years, I said. Clear-headed, purposeful, like I finally remember who I am besides your unpaid employee. That's not fair, isn't it? When was the last time you paid me for babysitting? When was the last time you asked if I was free before assuming I was available? When was the last time you considered that I might have my own plans, my own needs, my own life? Another pause. We've never, your family. Family helps each other. Yes, they do. Both directions. Mutual help, mutual consideration, mutual respect. What we have isn't family. It's servitude with holiday cards. Mom, that's harsh. Truth often is, but it's still truth. I hung up before he could respond, my hands shaking with adrenaline and something that felt dangerously like freedom. That evening, Mrs. Diaz invited me for dinner in her apartment, which was identical to mine in layout, but transformed by her personal touches. Photographs of genuinely happy moments, plants that thrived under her attention, books lying open where she'd been reading them because she wanted to, not because someone else expected her to. How was your day of freedom? She asked, serving homemade soup that smelled like comfort and independence. Terrifying. Wonderful. Like remembering how to breathe. The first day is always the hardest. After that, it gets easier to choose yourself. Choose myself. I like that phrase. It's the most important choice you can make. Not selfish, necessary. Like putting on your own oxygen mask before helping others. You can't save anyone if you disappear first. We talked until late about boundaries, self-worth, the difference between loving someone and letting them drain you dry. Mrs. Diaz shared stories from her own journey toward self-respect, the gradual process of teaching people in her life that she was a person with her own needs, rather than just a resource for fulfilling theirs. Will it get easier? I asked as she walked me to the door. The guilt will fade, she promised. The peace will grow, and eventually, either they'll learn to treat you better, or they'll show you clearly that they never really loved you. They just loved what you did for them. What if it's the second one? Then you'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free to find people who actually see you. That night, I slept better than I had in months. No middle-of-the-night anxiety about tomorrow's obligations. No worry about whether I was doing enough, giving enough, being enough for people who never seemed satisfied with my efforts. I woke up early but stayed in bed, enjoying the luxury of having nowhere urgent to be. No breakfast to prepare for ungrateful people. No schedule built around other people's convenience. No automatic yes to every request. My phone was buzzing with more messages, but I ignored it. Whatever crisis they thought required my immediate attention could wait until I decided to pay attention. Instead, I made myself a proper breakfast. Not toast grabbed between chores, but eggs and fresh fruit and coffee I actually tasted instead of gulping. I read the newspaper. I took a shower without rushing. I chose clothes that made me feel good instead of clothes that were practical for running errands or playing with children. By the time I checked my messages at noon, the tone had shifted from demanding to pleading to angry to manipulative. Lisa, Tommy keeps asking where you are. You're hurting him with this behavior. Lisa, I told him you weren't feeling well. Don't make me lie to him anymore. Lisa, fine, I'll hire a babysitter. But don't expect us to pay you back for all the help you've given us if you're going to abandon us now. The last message was revealing. The transactional nature of their affection was finally in the open. Help us or lose us. Be useful or be discarded. Love with conditions and expiration dates. I walked to the local library and spent the afternoon researching something I'd been fantasizing about. Small towns in upstate New York, where the cost of living was lower, where my social security might actually cover my expenses, where I could have a garden and neighbors who knew my name. I found a place called Hudson, about 2 hours north of the city. Victorian houses with porches, walkable downtown, community gardens, Senior center with activities that sounded like fun rather than obligations. I called a real estate agent and made an appointment for the following week. Then I called a lawyer, something I'd never thought I'd need, but Mrs. Diaz had insisted was necessary. I want to understand my financial situation, I told the receptionist. I've been supporting family members, and I want to know my legal obligations and rights. The appointment was scheduled for Friday. 3 days to prepare for a conversation I'd never imagined having, about boundaries I'd never thought to set. Wednesday brought a surprise visitor. Tommy appeared at my door with Michael, both of them looking like they were on a diplomatic mission. "Grandma!" Tommy launched himself into my arms with the uncomplicated affection that only 8-year-olds possess. "Daddy said you were sick. Are you feeling better?" I looked at Michael over Tommy's head. Sick was easier than selfish, I supposed. Easier than explaining to a child that his grandmother had finally admitted she deserved better treatment. "I'm feeling much better, sweetheart. Different, but better. Good, because I missed you. And I still need help with fractions." Michael shifted uncomfortably. "Tommy, why don't you sit on the couch and I'll get you some juice while Grandma and I talk?" I got Tommy settled with a book and joined Michael in my tiny kitchen, both of us standing because there wasn't room for chairs. "Mom, we need to talk about what's happening here." "I agree. We do. Lisa's really upset. She says you're being vindictive and unreasonable." "I'm sure she does. What do you say?" "I say I don't understand what changed. We've had this arrangement for years. It's worked for everyone." "No, Michael. It's worked for you and Lisa. I've made it work. But it hasn't worked for me." "How can you say that? You love spending time with Tommy. You've always wanted to be involved in our lives. I love Tommy more than my own life, and you know that. But loving someone doesn't mean accepting disrespect from the people around them. It doesn't mean sacrificing my dignity to serve their convenience." "What disrespect? We've never—" "Michael, stop. Please just stop and think honestly about how you've treated me. When was the last time you asked about my health, my feelings, my plans? When was the last time you considered whether I might be tired or sad, or need support myself?" He was quiet for a long time, staring at his shoes. "When was the last time you thanked me for something instead of just expecting it?" I pressed gently. "When was the last time you included me in family decisions that affect my life? When was the last time you treated me like a person whose feelings matter?" "I do think your feelings matter." "Do you?" "Because from where I sit, it seems like my feelings only matter when they might interfere with your convenience." "That's not— we've never—" "Michael, you called me when I was in the hospital with pneumonia and asked if I could still babysit that night because Lisa had a business dinner she couldn't miss." His face flushed. "I didn't realize you were that sick." "You didn't ask. You heard hospital and still asked if I could work, because that's what I am to you. Not your mother who might be scared and in pain, but your employee who might not be available for her shift." The silence stretched between us, filled with truths neither of us had wanted to acknowledge. "I don't know how to fix this," he said finally. "You start by acknowledging that it's broken. You start by admitting that the way you've been treating me isn't okay." "Okay, yes, maybe we've taken you for granted sometimes." "Sometimes? Michael, I gave you my life savings. I moved to an expensive neighborhood I couldn't afford. I gave up my friends, my interests, my independence, my future security. I became your unpaid nanny, housekeeper, and emergency fund. And in exchange, I got tolerance. Not love, not respect, not consideration, just tolerance for my continued existence in your lives." He looked stricken. "Mom, I didn't realize—" "Because you never asked. You never wondered what it cost me to say yes to everything. You never considered that I might have dreams and needs and limits, too. What do you want me to do now?" The question hung in the air. What did I want? I'd been so focused on what I didn't want that I hadn't fully considered what I actually did want. "I want you to see me," I said finally. "Not as your solution to childcare problems or financial emergencies, but as a person. A woman who's lived 72 years, who has her own stories and struggles and hopes. I do see you. Do you? What makes me happy, Michael? What am I afraid of? What do I dream about? When did I last feel proud of something I accomplished?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. Then opened it again and closed it again. You don't know, I said gently, because those things about me don't affect your life, so they don't register as important. Tommy's voice called from the living room. Grandma? Can you help me with this book? There's a word I don't know. Of course, sweetheart. I started toward the living room, then stopped and looked back at Michael. Think about what I said. Really think about it. And when you're ready to have a different kind of relationship, one based on mutual respect instead of one-sided service, let me know. I spent the next hour helping Tommy with his reading, enjoying his excitement over new words and his questions about the story. This was the part of being a grandmother I treasured. The teaching, the connection, the pure joy of watching a young mind grow. It was everything else around it that had become toxic. When they left, Tommy hugged me tight and whispered, I love you, Grandma. Even when you're sick, I love you. I love you too, sweetheart. More than all the stars in the sky. After they were gone, I sat at my kitchen table and made another list. This one was different from the others. It was a list of what I wanted my life to look like going forward. Not what I wanted from them, but what I wanted for myself. I wanted to wake up in the morning excited about my day instead of dreading the demands it would bring. I wanted relationships where I could be tired or sad or unavailable sometimes without it being treated as a personal failure. I wanted to spend my money on things that brought me joy instead of solving other people's problems. I wanted to be valued for who I was, not just for what I could provide. I wanted to matter. Friday's appointment with the lawyer was eye-opening in ways I hadn't expected. Mrs. Patricia Hendricks was a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s who specialized in elder law and family exploitation. Tell me about your financial situation, she said, settling behind her desk with a legal pad. I explained the loans that had never been repaid, the gifts that had been expected rather than appreciated, the gradual drain of my retirement savings to support a lifestyle I couldn't afford for people who could afford to support themselves. How much of your own money have you given to your son's family? She asked. I'd never calculated it before. Adding it up was shocking. Nearly $60,000 over 3 years, between direct gifts, unpaid loans, and subsidizing their lifestyle. And what do you have left? Social Security, about $800 in savings. She made notes, asking detailed questions about the circumstances of each financial transfer, whether there were written agreements, whether any of it had been presented as loans with repayment terms. Mrs. Martinez, she said finally, what you're describing is a common form of elder financial abuse. It often happens within families, with adult children exploiting their parents' love and desire to help. Abuse? The word felt too strong, too dramatic. Financial abuse doesn't require evil intentions. It simply requires taking advantage of someone's resources in ways that cause them harm. You've been financially harmed by this arrangement. But I chose to help them. Did you? Or did you feel pressured to help them? There's a difference between generous giving and manipulative taking. I thought about all the emergencies that had required immediate financial help, the guilt trips that followed any hesitation, the way my contributions had been treated as obligations rather than gifts. What can I do about it now? That depends on what you want to achieve. You can demand repayment, though enforcement can be difficult without written agreements. You can set boundaries around future financial support. Most importantly, you can protect your remaining assets from further exploitation. She helped me set up a separate bank account that only I would have access to, and explained how to protect my Social Security from being treated as family income. She also gave me information about housing assistance programs for seniors, ways to stretch my limited resources without depending on family members who had proven unreliable. The hardest part, she said as I gathered my papers to leave, is accepting that people you love might not have your best interests at heart, that they might love what you can do for them more than they love you as a person. How do I know the difference? Stop doing things for them and see if they still want a relationship with you. That weekend, I called the real estate agent in Hudson and arranged to look at apartments the following Tuesday. I also called the senior center Mrs. Diaz had mentioned and signed up for a pottery class that started the next week. Small steps toward a life that belonged to me. Monday brought another crisis text from Lisa. Tommy fell off his bike. Need you to come stay with him while I handle insurance at the ER. My first instinct was to grab my coat and rush over immediately, but I paused, reading the message more carefully. Handle insurance? At the ER? While leaving an injured child alone? I called her instead of texting back. Lisa, is Tommy seriously hurt? Scraped knee, probably needs stitches. But I have to deal with all the paperwork and I can't keep track of him while I'm doing that. Are you at the hospital now? Yes, and he's asking for you. Put him on the phone. Rosa, I don't have time for… Put him on the phone. Tommy's voice was small but not panicked. Grandma? I hurt my knee, but it's not too bad. The doctor says I'm brave. You are brave, sweetheart. Is Mama there with you? Yeah, she's right here. She's just stressed about the forms. I understood. Lisa was treating me like the emergency contact, the person responsible for emotional comfort while she handled administrative tasks. Using my bond with Tommy to manipulate me into providing free labor. Tommy, let me talk to Mama again. Rosa, can you please just come? This is taking forever and he's being clingy. Lisa, you're his mother. Comfort him yourself. Hold his hand. Tell him stories. Be present for your injured child instead of trying to delegate that responsibility to someone else. I can't focus on the paperwork if I'm dealing with him too. Then handle one thing at a time. The paperwork can wait. Your son needs you now. This is ridiculous. You're being deliberately difficult. I'm being your child's grandmother, not your unpaid babysitter. There's a difference. I hung up before she could argue further. An hour later, Michael called. Mom, what the hell? Lisa said you refused to help when Tommy was hurt. I offered to talk to Tommy and comfort him over the phone. I didn't refuse to help. I refused to drop everything and provide free childcare for a child whose mother was literally standing next to him. She needed to focus on the insurance forms. Michael, she's an adult woman who manages multi-million-dollar investment portfolios. I think she can handle insurance paperwork and comfort her injured son at the same time. That's not the point. When there's a family emergency, family shows up. Where were you during this emergency? Silence. You were at work, weren't you? Too busy to leave for your injured son, but not too busy to be angry at me for being unavailable to cover for both of his absent parents. That's not… I couldn't just leave in the middle of… But I could? My time is less important than yours. My commitments matter less. You don't have commitments, Mom. You're retired. The casual dismissal hit like cold water. You don't have commitments. Like retirement meant I'd cease to exist as a person with my own life, my own schedule, my own right to make choices about how I spent my time. Michael, listen to yourself. Really listen. You just told me that my life doesn't matter because I'm not earning money anymore. I didn't say your life doesn't matter. You said I don't have commitments worth respecting. What's the difference? Another silence. I signed up for a pottery class, I said. Today was the first session. That was my commitment that Lisa expected me to abandon without question. A pottery class? Mom, this is your grandson we're talking about. Yes. And if you or Lisa had actually thought Tommy was seriously injured, one of his parents would have stayed to comfort him instead of immediately calling the unpaid help. The conversation ended badly, with Michael frustrated and me exhausted, but strangely calm. The pattern was so clear now. Crisis, demand, guilt, compliance. Except I'd broken the pattern, and they didn't know what to do with a version of me that considered my own needs. Tuesday's trip to Hudson felt like stepping into a different universe. The train ride north took me through landscapes that looked like paintings, rolling hills, small farms, trees starting their autumn transformation into gold and red. The city's relentless energy gradually faded, replaced by something quieter, more spacious. Hudson itself was charming in a way that made my chest ache with possibility. Victorian houses with front porches where people actually sat and talked to neighbors. Small shops owned by locals who knew each other's names. A farmer's market where the pace allowed for actual conversations instead of rushed transactions. The apartment I looked at was nothing fancy. A one-bedroom in a converted Victorian, with hardwood floors and windows that let in actual sunlight. The rent was less than half what I was paying in Manhattan, and the landlord, a retired teacher named Margaret, showed me around personally instead of sending an assistant. We have a book club that meets here on Tuesday evenings, she mentioned as we looked at the sunny living room. And there's a community garden behind the building. Several of our residents grow vegetables and flowers together. Community. The word felt foreign after 3 years of isolation disguised as family obligation. Would I be able to have visitors? I asked. A grandson? Of course. Children are always welcome. There's a playground 2 blocks away, and the library has wonderful programs for kids. I could picture it. Tommy visiting on weekends, exploring a small town where people walked instead of rushing, where we could go to the library or feed ducks at the park without navigating crowds and noise. Quality time instead of crisis management. I'll need to think about it, I told Margaret, but I was already thinking, already calculating, already imagining. The train ride back to the city felt like descending back into chaos. The noise, the crowds, the relentless pace that had once seemed exciting now felt overwhelming. I'd forgotten that life could be quieter, gentler, more human-scaled. That evening, Mrs. Diaz knocked on my door with 2 cups of tea and expectant eyes. "How was your adventure?" "Eye-opening," I said, letting her into my apartment. "I found a place that feels like home in ways this never has. Are you going to take it?" "I think so, but it means leaving everything familiar." "Is familiar serving you well?" I looked around my cramped apartment, at the photos of family members who treated me like an employee, at the furniture I'd had to sell or give away to fit into this smaller space, at the life I'd built around other people's needs. "No," I said. "Familiar is slowly killing me. Then maybe it's time for unfamiliar." Wednesday brought an unexpected visitor. Tommy, alone, looking serious in the way only children can when they're processing adult problems they don't fully understand. "How did you get here, sweetheart?" I asked, letting him in and looking down the hallway for accompanying adults. "Mama's in a meeting with David. She said I could walk to the lobby and wait, but I came here instead." David. Not hiding it anymore, not even from her 8-year-old son. "Does she know you're here?" I left her a note. She probably won't read it until her meeting's over anyway. The casual acceptance of parental inattention in his voice broke my heart. This child was already learning to manage around adult selfishness, already adapting to being secondary to his mother's affair and his father's work. "Are you hungry?" "A little. But mostly I want to ask you something." We settled on my couch with peanut butter crackers and milk, Tommy's legs swinging from the edge of my chair. "Grandma, are you mad at Mama and Daddy?" The question was delivered with the directness that children bring to complicated situations, cutting through all the adult explanations and manipulations to the heart of the matter. "I'm not mad." "Exactly," I said carefully. "I'm sad about how they've been treating me." "How have they been treating you?" "Like they only want me around when they need something. Like they don't care about my feelings or what makes me happy." Tommy considered this seriously. "That does sound mean." "It is mean. Even when people don't mean to be mean, it still hurts." "Is that why you don't come over anymore?" "I still want to see you, sweetheart. But I need to teach the grown-ups in your family how to treat me better." "How do you teach grown-ups?" "Sometimes by not doing things for them until they start being nicer." Tommy nodded like this made perfect sense. "Like when I don't share my toys with kids who are mean to me." "Exactly like that." "But what if they don't learn? What if they keep being mean?" The question every adult should ask but rarely does. What if setting boundaries doesn't change their behavior? What if the relationship really is as shallow as it appears? Then I'll know they don't really love me the way I deserve to be loved, I said honestly. And I'll find other people who do. "Would you still be my grandma?" "Always, Tommy. No matter what happens with the grown-ups, I will always be your grandma who loves you more than all the stars in the sky." He launched himself into my arms for a hug that squeezed my heart. This child loved me simply, completely, without conditions or expectations. The way family love was supposed to work. "Tommy, if I moved somewhere else, would you want to visit me sometimes?" "Where would you move?" "Maybe to a small town with a playground and a library and neighbors who wave hello. Somewhere quieter than here." "Would there be room for me?" "There would always be room for you." He was quiet for a while, thinking. Would Mama and Daddy be mad? Probably. But their feelings about my choices aren't my responsibility anymore. What's responsibility mean? It means the things you're supposed to take care of. I'm supposed to take care of myself and make good choices for my life. Your Mama and Daddy are supposed to take care of themselves and you. But Mama says you're supposed to take care of all of us. The casual revelation hit me like a punch. Lisa had been teaching my grandson that my purpose was to serve their family, that my needs didn't matter compared to theirs. Tommy, everybody is supposed to take care of themselves first. Then they can help other people if they want to. But helping should be a choice, not an obligation. So you chose to help us before, but now you're choosing not to? I'm choosing to help in different ways. Ways that don't hurt me. He seemed to understand this better than his parents had. When Lisa finally appeared at my door 45 minutes later, she was angry in the way people are when they're embarrassed by their own behavior. Tommy, what are you doing here? I told you to wait in the lobby. I left you a note, Tommy said calmly. I wanted to visit Grandma. You can't just wander around the building by yourself. What if something had happened? Like what? I walked up 2 flights of stairs. Lisa shot me a look like Tommy's reasonable response was somehow my fault. We need to go. I have another meeting. With David? Tommy asked innocently. Lisa's face flushed. That's none of your business. But you said, Tommy, we're leaving. Now. I knelt down to Tommy's level and gave him another hug. Thank you for visiting me, sweetheart. I loved spending time with you. Will I see you soon? Yes. But maybe next time we should plan it ahead so everyone knows where you are. Lisa grabbed Tommy's hand with more force than necessary. Come on, we're late. At the door, she turned back to me with an expression I couldn't read. This has to stop, Rosa. Tommy's getting confused about family dynamics. What's confusing him is having a mother who's more focused on her affair than on her son's emotional needs. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Lisa's face went white, then red. I don't know what you think you know, but I know enough. And more importantly, I know I'm done pretending I don't know. You're going to destroy this family. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just not going to hide your destruction anymore. She left without another word, pulling Tommy behind her. Through my window, I watched them walk down the street. Lisa on her phone before they'd even reached the corner. Tommy looking back at my building as they disappeared around the corner. That night, I called Margaret in Hudson and told her I wanted the apartment. When would you like to move in? She asked. As soon as possible. Thursday was moving day. I'd hired movers for the few pieces of furniture I was keeping, donated clothes that no longer fit my new vision of myself, and packed my life into boxes that felt lighter than they should have. Mrs. Diaz helped me load the last of my belongings into the moving truck, her eyes bright with what looked like pride. I'm going to miss you, she said, but I'm so happy you're choosing yourself. I'm scared, I admitted. Of course you are. All good changes start with being scared. I'd left a letter for Michael and Lisa, explaining my decision and leaving my new contact information. Not because I owed them an explanation, but because I wanted to close this chapter clearly, with honesty instead of drama. The letter said simply that I was moving somewhere I could build a life based on my own needs and interests, where I could be a grandmother when they wanted one, instead of an employee when they needed one. I told them I would always love Tommy, would always welcome visits, but that I was done sacrificing my dignity for their convenience. I also left another letter, addressed to Tommy, but sealed and marked for him to open when he was older. In it, I tried to explain why his grandmother had left, not to turn him against his parents, but to give him a different model of how people could choose to be treated. The drive upstate felt like traveling through time. Each mile away from the city was a mile away from the person I'd become. Small, accommodating, invisible. Each mile toward Hudson was a mile toward the person I used to be before I forgot that I mattered. Margaret was waiting for me at the apartment with keys and a plate of homemade cookies. Welcome home, she said, and the words felt true in a way they hadn't for years. That first evening in my new place, I sat on my porch steps watching the sun set over unfamiliar streets that already felt more welcoming than the neighborhood I'd left behind. No sirens, no honking, no sounds of millions of people rushing nowhere. Just birds, and wind in leaves, and the distant sound of children playing in a yard where they had room to run. My phone had been buzzing with calls and messages all day, but I'd turned off the sound. Whatever crisis they thought required my immediate attention could wait until I decided I was ready to pay attention. For the first time in years, I was not available for other people's emergencies. Instead of checking my messages, I called Mrs. Diaz to let her know I'd arrived safely. Then I unpacked my tea kettle and made myself a cup of chamomile tea. I sat in my new living room, surrounded by boxes but feeling more settled than I had in my fully furnished apartment in the city. This was what peace felt like. This was what it meant to come home to yourself. Friday morning brought a phone call from Michael, his voice tight with the kind of anger that comes from having your convenience disrupted. "Mom, what the hell do you think you're doing?" "Good morning to you too, Michael." "Don't good morning me. You disappeared without warning, left some cryptic letter, and now you're not answering your phone. Tommy's been crying, Lisa's furious, and I don't understand what's gotten into you. I moved to a place where I can be happy instead of useful. That's selfish and dramatic and completely unnecessary. Maybe. But it's my choice to make. What about Tommy? What about your responsibilities here? What about them? You're his father, Lisa's his mother. Raise your own child. You can't just abandon family because you're having some kind of midlife crisis. I'm not having a midlife crisis, Michael. I'm having a clarity crisis. I finally see our relationship for what it really is instead of what I wanted it to be. Which is what? A business arrangement. You and Lisa provide minimum tolerance and maximum guilt. I provide maximum service and minimum complaint. It's not family. It's exploitation with a family label. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that I wondered if he'd hung up. "Mom," he said finally, his voice different, smaller. "I never meant for you to feel that way. I know you didn't mean it. That's what makes it worse. It never occurred to you to consider how I felt because my feelings didn't affect your convenience. That's not... we never asked you to sacrifice everything. Yes, you did. Every time you called with an emergency that required my immediate help. Every time you assumed I was available without asking first. Every time you acted like my money, my time, my energy belonged to your family by right instead of by choice. We were grateful. Grateful for my service. Not interested in me as a person. How can you say that? You're our family. Am I? When did you last ask me about my dreams, my fears, my interests, my health, my hopes for the future? When did you last consider what would make me happy instead of what would make me useful? Another long silence. "I don't know," he whispered. "That's the problem, Michael. You don't know me at all. You know what I can do for you, but you don't know who I am apart from that. I want to know. Do you? Or do you want me to come back and continue being available for whatever you need? I want you to be happy. I just never realized you weren't. Because you never asked. Because my emotional state only mattered when it might interfere with my ability to serve your needs." God, Mom, when you put it like that, it sounds terrible, doesn't it? But that's what it's been like from my side for 3 years. I heard him crying on the other end of the line. Actual tears. Maybe the first genuine emotion he'd shown me in years. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I should have known, but I didn't. Thank you for saying that. It means more than you know. Will you come back? Can we start over? I don't know yet. I need time to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to earn love through service. I need to remember what it feels like to matter. You do matter. You matter so much to all of us. No, Michael. What I do matters to you. There's a difference. How do I learn the difference? By getting to know me as a person instead of as a solution to your problems. By caring about my happiness even when it doesn't serve your needs. By treating me like family instead of like staff. I want to do that. I want to learn, then learn. But learn because you love me, not because you want me to come back and take care of your problems again. What about Tommy? He really is missing you. I miss him too. More than you can imagine. But I can't sacrifice my dignity again just to maintain access to him. If you want him to have a relationship with me, it has to be based on respect, not dependency. What does that look like? It looks like visits that are planned instead of emergencies. It looks like Tommy coming here on weekends when you want to give him a special experience, not when you need free babysitting. It looks like me being his grandmother, not your employee. I think I understand. Do you? Because understanding is different from agreeing to change. And change is different from actually changing. I want to try. We all want to try. We'll see. But Michael, I'm not coming back to the city. This is my home now. If you want a relationship with me, it happens here on these terms. Okay. Yes, that's okay. Don't answer so quickly. Think about what it actually means. Think about whether you're willing to put in the effort to build a real relationship instead of just maintaining a convenient arrangement. After I hung up, I sat on my porch for a long time, watching my new neighbors tend their gardens and walk their dogs and live their lives at a pace that allowed for actual living instead of just survival. Change was possible. Maybe. But I'd learned the difference between promises and actions, between good intentions and actual change. I would wait and see which one this turned out to be. The following weeks fell into a rhythm I'd forgotten was possible. I woke when my body was ready, instead of when someone else needed me. I had breakfast while reading, instead of while rushing. I took walks through town, stopping to chat with shopkeepers and neighbors who seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. I joined Margaret's book club and discovered that intelligent conversation about ideas was something I'd been missing without realizing it. I started volunteering at the local animal shelter, finding joy in caring for creatures who were grateful for attention without demanding it as their due. Most surprisingly, I began painting again, something I'd loved in college but had abandoned during my years of serving others. Margaret had converted an empty room in the basement to a small art studio that residents could use, and I found myself spending hours there, rediscovering colors and forms, and the meditative joy of creating something beautiful just because I wanted to. My phone still buzzed with messages from Michael and Lisa, but the tone had shifted. Less demanding, more tentative. Actual questions about my well-being instead of immediate requests for service. Lisa had even called once, awkwardly. "Rosa? It's Lisa. I've been thinking about what you said." "What part specifically?" "About respect. And treating you like family instead of like help. And you were right. I can see that now. I got so focused on building our financial future, managing all the investments in cryptocurrency portfolios, that I forgot about managing relationships. I forgot that people aren't resources to be optimized. That's insight, Lisa. What matters is what you do with it. I want to do better. I want Tommy to see healthy relationships, healthy boundaries. I want him to learn that love doesn't mean using people. Those are good wants. The question is whether they're strong enough to change actual behavior. I'm working on it. Therapy, individual and couples, trying to figure out how I became someone who could treat you the way I did. What have you learned? That I was so afraid of not having enough money, not being successful enough, that I turned everything into a transaction, including family relationships, including love. And Michael? He's horrified. Really horrified when he realized what our dynamic looked like from your perspective. He's been calling Tommy every night, actually talking to him instead of just checking in. He's been present. Finally. That's good to hear. Rosa, I know I don't deserve it, but I'd like to try again. Differently, if you're willing. What does differently look like? Like visits where we come to see you, not where you come to serve us. Like conversations where we ask about your life instead of talking about our problems. Like respect for your time, your space, your right to say no. Those are nice words, Lisa. But words are easy. I know. That's why I'm not asking you to trust me yet. I'm just asking you to let us try to earn back what we threw away. It was, I had to admit, more self-awareness than I'd expected from someone who'd treated me so carelessly for so long. But self-awareness was still just words, until it became action. We'll see, I said. Time will tell. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday morning, Michael and Tommy appeared on my doorstep. Not with emergencies or demands, but with a picnic basket and tentative smiles. We thought maybe we could spend the day getting to know you, Michael said. Not needing anything from you, just being with you. Tommy was bouncing on his toes with excitement. Grandma, Daddy says you have an art room here, and there's a playground, and we brought sandwiches. I looked at their faces, hopeful, nervous, trying, and felt something in my chest that might have been the beginning of forgiveness. Come in, I said. Welcome to my home. We spent the day doing things I'd dreamed of doing with Tommy, but had never had time for when I was managing their crises. We painted terrible watercolor pictures in Margaret's art studio, laughing at our failed attempts to capture the beauty outside my windows. We walked to the playground where Tommy could run and climb without city dangers, where we could sit on a bench and actually talk, instead of managing between appointments. Over sandwiches in the community garden, Michael asked me questions he'd never asked before. "Mom, what do you like about living here? What makes you happy?" "The pace," I said, thinking. "The way conversations happen without rushing. The way neighbors actually know each other's names. The way I can wake up in the morning and choose how to spend my day instead of having it chosen for me." "Do you miss anything about the city?" "I miss the museums, the restaurants, the energy." I paused. "I miss the version of family we used to be, before I became the solution to all your problems." Tommy, who had been half listening while exploring nearby flower beds, looked up. "What version was that?" "The version where we were excited to see each other, where we talked about interesting things instead of just emergencies, where everyone's feelings mattered." "Will we be that version again?" he asked with the directness that children bring to complicated questions. Michael and I looked at each other. "We're going to try," Michael said carefully. "But it will take time to learn how to be a better family." "What's a better family like?" "A better family cares about everyone's happiness, not just some people's convenience," I said. "A better family asks before assuming. A better family says thank you and means it." "That sounds nice," Tommy said, and went back to exploring. Michael was quiet for a long time. "I never understood how lonely you must have been," he said finally. "Being surrounded by people who needed you but didn't see you. It was the loneliest I'd ever been in my life. I'm sorry. Really, deeply sorry. Not just for what we did, but for how long it took me to notice." "Apologies are important," I said, "but change matters more. How will we know if we're changing? How will you know if we're getting better? When you care about my answers to the questions you ask. When you remember what I tell you about myself. When you consider my needs even when they don't serve your convenience. And if we can't, if we fail, then we'll all know where we really stand, and I'll know I made the right choice in leaving." The conversation was interrupted by Tommy's discovery of a butterfly that had landed on his hand. We spent the next 20 minutes in nature-induced wonder, marveling at colors and patterns and the simple miracle of a small creature trusting enough to rest on human skin. It was the kind of moment that had been impossible in our old life. Unscheduled, unhurried, not serving anyone's agenda except the agenda of being present for beauty. That evening, after they'd driven back to the city, I sat on my porch watching the sunset and feeling something I'd almost forgotten: hope. Not the desperate hope that comes from needing things to change, but the quiet hope that comes from being okay whether they change or not. My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. "Thank you for the best day ever. I love you more than all the stars." And another from Michael. "Thank you for letting us try. Today felt like family in a way I'd forgotten was possible." Nothing from Lisa, but that was okay. She was working on her own healing, her own understanding of how to be in relationship without being transactional. That work would take time, and it wasn't my job to manage her timeline. I went inside and made tea, settling into my favorite chair with a book I'd been wanting to read. Outside my windows, the small town settled into evening rhythms: dogs walking, families finishing dinner, neighbors calling goodnight to each other across yards. This was what contentment felt like. This was what it meant to choose yourself without apology. 6 months later, Michael and Tommy had established a routine of visiting every other weekend. Sometimes they came alone, sometimes with Lisa, who was gradually learning how to be present instead of managing. Our conversations had deepened, moving beyond logistics and emergencies to actual sharing of thoughts, dreams, fears, hopes. Lisa had indeed started therapy, working to understand how her childhood fear of financial insecurity had turned her into someone who treated relationships like investments. She was learning to be vulnerable instead of controlling, to ask for what she needed instead of manipulating to get it. Most surprisingly, she had ended her relationship with David, choosing instead to invest in repairing her marriage and family. "I realized," she told me during one visit, "that I was running away from intimacy, not toward something better. It was easier to have an affair than to be honest about what wasn't working in my real relationships. The financial exploitation hadn't been addressed yet, and I wasn't sure it ever would be. But I'd stopped needing that particular justice. My worth wasn't tied to their repayment anymore. I had built a life that didn't depend on their acknowledgement of past wrongs, and that freedom was worth more than money." Tommy thrived in our new dynamic. Without the tension of adults managing crises, He could simply be a child enjoying his grandmother's attention. He painted terrible art with me, learned to identify birds in the community garden, made friends with Margaret's cat, and asked endless questions about life that I actually had time to answer thoughtfully. One Saturday afternoon, while Michael was reading on my porch and Tommy was building elaborate structures with blocks on my living room floor, Lisa appeared at my door with something I'd never seen on her face before. Peace. Rosa, could we talk? Privately? We walked to the small park at the end of my street, where benches faced a pond that reflected sky and trees like a mirror. I've been thinking about accountability, she said after we'd settled on a bench. About making amends for the way I treated you. Oh? I can't give you back the years I stole from your life. I can't undo the disrespect, the financial exploitation, the way I made you feel invisible. But I want to try to balance the scales somehow. She handed me an envelope. It's not everything. I'll never be able to calculate the true cost of what I took from you, but it's a start. Inside was a cashier's check for $15,000. Lisa, this is too much. It's not nearly enough, but it's what I can do right now without creating new financial stress for my family. There will be more gradually. I've committed to paying you back over time. I do. I need to do this. Not for you, but for me. I need to learn that love costs something, that relationships require investment, that taking care of people means actually taking care of them. We sat in silence, watching ducks navigate the pond with more grace than most humans managed navigating relationships. Thank you, I said finally. Not for the money, though I'm grateful, but for understanding that this needed to happen. I'm learning a lot in therapy about boundaries, about respect, about what healthy relationships actually look like. I'm learning that I was taught some very dysfunctional things about family and obligation, such as that love meant never saying no. That family meant sacrificing yourself for others without question. That giving meant giving until it hurt, and then giving more. Those are hard lessons to unlearn. They are. But I want Tommy to learn different lessons. I want him to see that love includes respect, that family means mutual care, that giving comes from abundance, not depletion. What does Michael think about all this change? He's terrified and relieved in equal measure. Terrified because changing feels risky, relieved because the old patterns weren't working for anyone, including him. And you? How are you handling the changes? It's hard. I spent so many years afraid of not having enough that I forgot to notice when I had plenty. I forgot that relationships are about more than security. I forgot that love is supposed to feel good. Does it feel good now? Sometimes. When I remember to be present instead of planning. When I stop managing and start participating. When I treat the people I love like people instead of like resources. We walked back to my apartment in comfortable silence. Inside, Tommy had built what appeared to be a castle for Margaret's cat, who was graciously pretending to be royalty while Tommy served her imaginary tea. "Mama!" he called when he saw Lisa. "Come see Princess Whisker's palace." Lisa sat on my floor without worrying about her clothes and entered into Tommy's game with the kind of presence I'd rarely seen from her. Michael looked up from his book and smiled. Really smiled. Not the polite social smile he used to wear like armor. "This looks like family," I said to no one in particular. "It feels like family, too," Michael replied. Finally. Later that evening, after they'd driven back to the city, I sat on my porch with Margaret and Mrs. Diaz, who had come to visit for the weekend. "How does it feel?" Mrs. Diaz asked. "Watching them learn to see you? Strange. Good strange. But strange. I spent so long being invisible that being seen feels overwhelming sometimes." "That's normal," Margaret said. "When you've been shrinking yourself for years, taking up space feels dangerous at first. Do you think they'll sustain the changes? Or will they slide back into old patterns when the novelty wears off?" "Some of both, probably," Mrs. Diaz said. "Change isn't linear. They'll backslide sometimes. The question is whether they'll catch themselves and correct course, or whether they'll give up and blame you for being too demanding." "And what will you do if they slide back?" Margaret asked. "The same thing I did this time. Choose myself. Set boundaries. Refuse to sacrifice my dignity for their convenience." "But it would be easier now, wouldn't it? Now that you know you can survive their disapproval?" I thought about that. Yes, much easier. I'm not afraid of being alone anymore. I'm not afraid of their anger. I'm not afraid of being called selfish for having needs. That's the real victory, Mrs. Diaz said. Not whether they change, but that you changed. You remembered your worth. The stars were coming out over Hudson, brighter than they ever were in the city, visible because there was less competition for attention. Like my own worth, more visible now because I'd removed the distractions of other people's constant demands. I want to ask you both something, I said. Do you think I did the right thing? Leaving like that? Forcing the confrontation? Risking the relationship with Tommy? What do you think? Margaret asked. I think I saved my own life. I think I was disappearing into their needs, becoming nothing but a function they performed. I think if I hadn't left, I would have eventually ceased to exist as a person. Then you have your answer. But what if they hadn't been willing to change? What if I'd lost Tommy forever? Then you would have learned that the relationship was already lost, Mrs. Diaz said gently. You would have learned that they loved what you did for them more than they loved you, and you would have been free to find people who actually saw you. It's scary to think about. It's scarier to live in relationships where you don't matter except as a service provider. We sat in the darkness, each of us thinking about the relationships we'd had to renegotiate, the boundaries we'd had to set, the people we'd had to disappoint in order to maintain our dignity. The hardest part, I said finally, was accepting that people I loved might not actually love me back, that they might just love my usefulness. And now? Now I know the difference. And I'll never accept usefulness disguised as love again. A year later, I was painting in Margaret's art studio when my phone rang. Tommy's voice, excited and pure. Grandma, guess what? Mama and Daddy said we can visit you for a whole week this summer. A real vacation, where we don't have to hurry back for meetings or work or anything. That sounds wonderful, sweetheart. What do you want to do during your visit? Everything. I want to paint more terrible pictures with you and visit Princess Whiskers and maybe learn to fish in the pond and help in the garden and... Oh, Mama wants to talk to you. Lisa's voice came on the line, warmer than I'd ever heard it. Rosa, I wanted to ask if we could make this a real vacation for you too. I know when we visit it's still work for you, cooking and cleaning and entertaining us. What if we rented a cottage at the lake for the week? Somewhere you could relax too? The offer surprised me. Lisa thinking about my experience of their visits. Lisa considering that I might need rest too. Lisa planning something that served my pleasure instead of just my obligation. That sounds lovely. But Lisa, you don't need to. I want to. We want to. We want you to feel cared for when we're together, not just useful. After I hung up, I sat in the art studio surrounded by paintings I'd created simply because they brought me joy. Paintings no one needed, that served no function except beauty, that existed because I wanted them to exist. Outside the window, I could see the community garden where neighbors worked their plots with the kind of attention that comes from love rather than obligation. I could see the playground where Tommy played without supervision because small towns allowed for that kind of freedom. I could see the life I'd built for myself, quiet, purposeful, mine. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mrs. Martinez, this is David, Lisa's former friend. I wanted you to know that Lisa is a different person now. Whatever you did to help her change, thank you. She's become someone worth loving. David. I stared at the message for a long time. Even the man Lisa had been having an affair with recognized her transformation. Even he could see that she'd become more authentic, more present, more capable of genuine relationship. I didn't respond to David's message, but I saved it. Not because I needed his validation, but because it confirmed something I'd been hoping, that the changes in my family weren't just performance for my benefit. They were real changes that rippled beyond our immediate relationships. That evening, Margaret knocked on my door with tea and cookies. You look peaceful today, she observed. I feel peaceful, like pieces are falling into place in ways I never expected. The family situation? Among other things, but mostly just this life, this choice to prioritize my own well-being. It keeps paying dividends I didn't anticipate. Such as being able to give from abundance instead of depletion. When Tommy visits now, I have energy for him because I'm not constantly drained by adult drama. When Michael asks for advice, I can offer wisdom instead of resentment, because I'm not being taken advantage of. And Lisa? Lisa is learning to be a person instead of just a role. It's making her a better mother, a better wife, a better daughter-in-law. Not perfect, but real. We sat on my porch as the sun set over Hudson, painting the sky in colors that never failed to amaze me. A year ago, I'd been watching sunsets through a grimy apartment window in Manhattan, feeling like I was disappearing. Now I was watching them from my own porch in a place that felt like home, feeling more like myself than I had in decades. "Can I tell you something?" Margaret said as darkness settled around us. "Of course. When you first looked at this apartment, I could see how much pain you were carrying. You looked like someone who'd been hollowed out from the inside. I wasn't sure you'd be able to fill yourself back up. What do you see now? Now I see someone who remembered her worth. Someone who learned the difference between serving others and serving yourself up to be consumed. It took me 72 years to figure that out. Better late than never. And now Tommy gets to grow up with a grandmother who models self-respect instead of self-sacrifice. That's a gift that will last his whole life." The next morning brought a surprise visitor. Michael, alone, looking nervous but determined. "Mom, do you have time to talk? I mean, really talk?" We settled in my living room with coffee and the kind of unhurried attention that had been impossible in our old life. "I've been thinking about the kind of father I want to be," he said. "The kind of son I want to be. The kind of person I want Tommy to become. And I realized I've been modeling some terrible things. Selfishness disguised as family loyalty. Taking advantage of people who love you. Treating care as something you're entitled to rather than something you're grateful for. What do you want to model instead? Reciprocity. Respect. The idea that everyone in the family matters, not just the people with the most immediate needs or the loudest demands. How does that look in practice? It looks like asking about your life instead of just updating you on mine. It looks like considering your schedule before making requests. It looks like teaching Tommy that love means thinking about other people's happiness, not just your own. Those are good goals, Michael. I have a question for you. A hard one. Okay. Do you forgive us? Really forgive us, not just tolerate us for Tommy's sake? I thought about the question seriously. I'm working on it. Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. It's a process you live. I forgive the past because holding on to resentment was hurting me more than it was hurting you. But trust has to be rebuilt through consistent action over time. How will we know when we've rebuilt it? When I stop expecting you to disappoint me. When I stop protecting myself from your potential selfishness. When I can be vulnerable with you without fear that you'll exploit that vulnerability. And are we getting closer to that? Yes. Slowly, but yes. Every conversation like this one brings us closer. Every visit where you see me as a person instead of a resource brings us closer. What can we do to speed up the process? Nothing. Trust rebuilds at its own pace. Trying to rush it usually backfires because it becomes another form of serving your needs instead of respecting mine. Michael nodded, looking thoughtful. I'm learning that a lot of what I thought was love was actually control. A lot of what I thought was caring was actually using. That's hard awareness to accept. It is. But it's better than continuing to hurt people I love without knowing I'm doing it. We spent the rest of the morning talking about his childhood. His memories of our relationship before he'd gotten married and started treating me like support staff. We talked about his fears as a parent, his hopes for Tommy's future, his gradual understanding of how his own behavior had been shaped by cultural messages about family obligations. I don't want Tommy to grow up thinking that loving someone means disappearing into their needs, he said as he was preparing to leave. Then teach him boundaries. Teach him that his worth isn't conditional on his usefulness. Teach him that healthy relationships require two whole people, not one person serving another. I'm trying to learn those things myself. That's the best way to teach them. After he left, I walked to the community garden and spent an hour tending the plot I'd claimed for myself. Vegetables I would eat, flowers I would cut for my table, plants I was growing because I wanted to grow them. Simple pleasures that belonged entirely to me. Mrs. Peterson, who worked the plot next to mine, waved from where she was weeding her tomatoes. "Your family visit went well?" she asked. "Yes, very well. They're learning to be family instead of just playing family." "What's the difference?" Family means caring about each other's well-being even when it's inconvenient. Playing family means performing care when it serves your image or needs. Ah, I know that distinction well. Took my own children 40 years to learn it. Do you think it's ever too late to change these patterns? It's too late when people stop trying. As long as they're willing to look honestly at themselves and make different choices, change is possible at any age. That evening, I started a new painting, not of landscapes or flowers, but of faces. Tommy's face, bright with curiosity and love. Michael's face, serious with the effort of learning new ways to be human. Lisa's face, softer now, more present, less defended. And in the center, my own face. Not as I'd seen myself during those years of service and invisibility, but as I saw myself now, valuable, worthy of respect, deserving of love that didn't require me to disappear. As I painted, I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago, desperate for connection, willing to pay any price for belonging, measuring my worth by my usefulness to others. That woman felt like someone from another lifetime, someone I remembered with compassion but no longer recognized as myself. The woman I was now had space in her life for joy, for rest, for relationships based on mutual respect rather than one-sided service. She had learned the difference between generosity and exploitation, between love and dependency, between family and servitude. She had learned that choosing herself wasn't selfish. It was necessary. It was the foundation on which healthy relationships could be built. Looking back now, from this place of peace and self-respect, I can see the journey clearly. The years of losing myself in other people's needs, the gradual erosion of my identity until I was nothing but function, service, availability, the moment of revelation that shattered my illusions and forced me to choose between dignity and belonging, the terror of that choice. The loneliness of those first days in Hudson, the slow, careful process of rebuilding a life that belonged to me, and finally, the unexpected gift, discovering that when I valued myself, others began to value me too. When I set boundaries, people learned to respect them. When I stopped accepting crumbs, some relationships disappeared, but others deepened into something real. The phone repair that started this whole journey feels like a lifetime ago. That moment of seeing Lisa's betrayal, of understanding how thoroughly I'd been used and dismissed, of recognizing that my sacrifice had been invisible to the people I'd made it for. But what I learned was bigger than Lisa's affair, bigger than my son's selfishness, bigger than my own patterns of self-sacrifice. What I learned was that love without respect isn't love at all. It's transaction, manipulation, exploitation dressed up in family clothes. Real love sees you. Real love considers your needs even when they're inconvenient. Real love treats you like a person, not like a resource. I found real love when I started giving it to myself, and once I learned what it felt like to be truly loved, I could never accept anything less from others. This afternoon, as I write this story, Tommy is visiting for the weekend. He's outside with Margaret's cat, building another elaborate palace from sticks and leaves and pure imagination. In a few minutes, I'll go outside and admire his architecture. Maybe suggest we add a garden for the royal cat or a flag to mark the palace boundaries. Tomorrow, Michael and Lisa will drive up for dinner. We'll eat food we prepare together, have conversations where everyone's voice matters, make plans that consider everyone's needs. It won't be perfect. We're all still learning, but it will be real. And Tuesday morning, after they've gone home, I'll wake up in my own bed, in my own home, surrounded by a life I chose for myself. I'll make my own breakfast, plan my own day, spend my time on activities that bring me joy rather than serve other people's convenience. I'll paint, or garden, or read, or visit with neighbors who know my name and care about my stories. I'll live like a person who matters, because I've learned that I do matter. Not because of what I can provide for others, but because I exist. Because I choose to exist fully and completely as myself. Have you ever felt invisible in your own life? Have you ever discovered that people you'd do anything for wouldn't do much of anything for you? Have you ever realized that you'd been accepting usefulness when what you deserved was love? If any of this feels familiar, I want you to know that change is possible. that you deserve better than relationships where your worth is measured by your availability, that choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. It's never too late to remember who you are beyond what you can do for others. It's never too late to demand respect, to set boundaries, to build a life that belongs to you. It's never too late to matter. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you experienced something similar? Do you know someone who might need to hear this story? If this resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. It helps me continue sharing these stories, continue opening my heart to strangers who might need to know they're not alone in their struggles. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. Thank you for being part of this community of people who believe that everyone deserves to be seen, valued, and loved for exactly who they are. Until next time, remember, you matter. You've always mattered. And it's never too late to start living like you believe that's true.